Welcome back to the Friday Five for April 14th, 2023. My name is Andrew Ayers. I'm an estate planning and business law attorney with offices in Edina, Minnesota and New York City. And we're going to look back at 5 quick questions from the week from meetings with clients and prospective clients that had quick questions that you may also have wondered about. I'm going to give you some quick answers. This week in Minnesota was really interesting. Our weather finally got warm. We've been up above 80 for a few days. And then, of course, as seems to always happen out here, we may get 3 inches of snow this weekend on Sunday. I'll try not to let that distract me, and let's go on to our 5 questions for the week. Number 1, do I need to update my old will if I move to another state? This may seem like a pretty easy answer to most people, but it comes up a lot. So in this case, the client had lived in New York about 20 years ago when they created the will, and they've now moved to a new state, in this case, Minnesota. And the question was, do I need to update that will, or is it still valid? So the first part of the answer is it is still valid. However, you are going to want to update it. So in this case, New York's laws and Minnesota's laws are very different when it comes to dealing with somebody's estate. In Minnesota, we have what's called informal probate, which is a streamlined process that you can distribute somebody's estate and work with the court. Whereas in New York, there is no informal probate, which means a much longer, more drawn-out process. So by moving from New York to Minnesota, even though that old will is valid, what they're missing is the ability to opt for informal probate directly in their will document. Now, it's not to mention that the will was also 20 years old, the children are now grown, and we have grandchildren on the way. So those are also really strong reasons why you'd want to consider updating your will if you've moved to a new state, especially when your will is 20 years old. Question 2, same conversation. My old estate plan didn't have healthcare documents. What should I do? Simple answer is you should do them now. The last few years have taught us the importance of having the right healthcare documents in place. As we've dealt with the pandemic and other health issues, we want to make sure that you have the right people making health decisions for you if something happens to you and you're unable to speak for yourself. Now, in this case, we had an older estate plan. I don't want to say very old, but it was an older estate plan from the early 2000s, and the attorney they had worked with just didn't create healthcare documents. So it was a basic will, and there was a power of attorney, but there was no healthcare power of attorney, and there was no HIPAA authorization to get access to medical records. So in that case, even if you don't update the will, it's still a good idea to at least add healthcare documents to your estate plan. Question 3, are you sure I can't put my estate plan documents into my safe deposit box? So I did a signing this week, and at the end we were talking with the clients about next steps and what they have to do and how to store their documents, and the classic question came up, can't I just put all of these documents into my safe deposit box? And the short answer is no, don't do that. Now, their argument was, well, the two of us are both signatories on the safe deposit box, so if something happens to one of us, the other person can just go to the bank and get the documents. You probably can tell what the problem is. If you're both in an accident, then we can't get to the documents. Especially when we have healthcare documents, we want to make sure they're easily accessible in case they're needed to make medical decisions for you. In the case of a simultaneous death or you both die at about the same time, we need to make sure that we can get to those documents. And if they're in a safe deposit box and both of you have died, you've now created the need for your executor, your personal representative to go to court to get a formal court order to direct the bank to open up your safe deposit box. Once that bank finds out that you're deceased, they lock things down until they see court orders or other documents allowing them to move money or to allow you access to a safe deposit box. They don't want any liability for someone to mess with an estate, so it's very important that we don't put those original documents in a safe deposit box. Question 4 this week, how do I move my business from one state to another? And this question is easily answered by, it depends what state you're moving from and what state you're moving to. So in this case, the client was moving their business from one state to another state that did not allow what we call domestication of the foreign business. So one way you can do it is if the states talk to each other and they play nice, it allows you to essentially take your company or your LLC, move it across the border, they can re-domesticate it and create it in the new state. However, not all states will allow you to do that. So in other situations, you may have to shut down the company in the original state and then open up a brand new company in the state you're going to be in. And it's very important that you get the timing right on this. You want to make sure that you've got that new state company open before you close the old state. Otherwise, you've created a window where you don't technically have an active company. And if there's a problem in the new state, you don't want to lose that ability to have protection. And then the third option with this, we can either just easily move it across, or we can close one and open the other, or you can just do file as a foreign business in the new state. So if you're still going to have contacts with the old state where you are, you can actually file for a foreign business authorization, which is the ability to do business in a different state from where you're incorporated. That's a much easier process. However, if you're not planning on going back to that original state, that may not be the area you want to focus on. It may not be the best option for you and your business. Question 5, what's the difference between an LLC and an S Corp? This is a very common question. There's a lot of information out there, and I think the big confusing part of this is the word corp after S. An LLC is a type of company. So it's a limited liability company. It's limiting liability for the owners of the company. That is a type of company that you can form with your state. So this is a state entity. Depending upon what state you're in, will give you a different process. The S Corp is a tax election. So this is a form you file with the IRS after you've set up your company. It doesn't have to be an LLC. It can be other types of companies as well, can also make the S Corp election. But when you see it online, you don't normally see the word election after S Corp. So people think that an S Corp is a type of company versus an LLC versus a partnership versus a C Corporation. And the fact is that's not the way it works. The S Corp is simply a tax election. It's a couple of forms you fill out after you've set up your business with the state. You then file that with the IRS. It's a relatively straightforward process, but it's one where it's very important to talk to your accountant and make sure that you understand what the process means and what's the tax implication. So what's happening is you're going from what's called a disregarded entity, which is what you are without the S Corp election, to an S Corp election, and the S Corp is taxed in a different manner. So it's not something you want to just blindly do one or the other. Make sure you've talked to an accountant. You spent all this time creating a business. You want to make sure it's done right, work with professionals, and get the answers to your questions. So those are our 5 questions for this week. As I said, we're going to get colder with some snow this weekend. So there'll be a link in the description for if you'd like to ask questions for future episodes. If you like this or you want to see more of this, you can hit the like button. You can go over to YouTube and subscribe for future episodes. And hopefully where you are, there's going to be no snow this weekend. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next week.